Good morning, tubers. Welcome back for another adventure. And you are looking at a 1986 Honda TRX200SX. These are nice motors, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus reverse. Relatively easy to work on. Unfortunately, they have a major defect. And the major defect is on the stator side of the motor, the sprocket side of the motor. The rear swing arm loosens up, the bearings loosen up. Then it throws the chain, and when it throws the chain, the case is really thin, and the way the chain bunches up in here, it tends to destroy the case. If you keep your swing arm in decent shape, and I believe these actually factory come through with a liner, a guard, a chain protector, whatever you want to call it, which will keep it from damaging your case. The outer stator cover, if you want to buy one of those, there are 3 currently available on eBay for $300 each. There are ways of patching them, and I've made videos on that. But specifically for this engine, I want to see if we can't get it running because I have a build project in mind for it. So let's take a minute before we start on the motor to look at the frame to see what we have and what we don't have. We do not have front drums, wheels, hubs, tires, any of that stuff. So not the easiest thing in the world to get. We also don't have a rear axle, brakes. We don't have a rear shock. So just missing those things, if you got to go to eBay and buy them, it does not pay to fix this all-terrain vehicle intact. I mean, you need motor mounts, you need a muffler, right? So you know, this thing is just going to be an engine project. So having just said that, what parts do we have? Well, we have the lights that go to the dash, though the dash is missing. Right, the CDI appears to be here, same with the ignition coil, but there seems to be a hole here. I assume this is where the harness comes down and plugs in for the switches, for the dashboard, for the headlight, right? All of that's missing, but the wire harness more or less appears to be intact. And I just mentioned that from a, you know, what do we have and what don't we have. We do have the voltage regulator, some of the heavier wires. So this, if you could put your hot little hands on this, as a parts machine, there's a lot of good stuff here. Moving on to the engine. When you see stuff like this, you begin to worry. So that's not a good thing. You know, this being torn up is not a good thing. Looks like they got various forms of sealer on it. It's not locked. The carburetor's here, but you could see the throttle that goes on it. This rig also, I mean, it has this throttle with that, and it also has another throttle here. So I have a bountiful of throttles to take off of there and put off to the side. The chains here, that's a good thing. So let's start on the motor. First things first, is my motor locked up? Let's run it through a couple of full turns. So it does go around. That's a good sign. We're going to have to get the spark plug out, see what's going on in there, and check the oil. This thing should have a top motor mount. It is missing, and it looks like bugs have been filling the casting holes with mud. I think this motor, yeah, I think this is the only bolt holding this motor on. If you take a look through here, the casting isn't great, right? No front motor mounts. So if we do manage to get this started, one has to keep in mind, don't, you know, be gunning it and banging it around too much. That could break off easily. Looks like reverse has been snipped, and we got no oil. Let's see what stories the spark plug could tell us. Doesn't look too horrible. Yeah, let's go with a quick compression test, right? It never hurts to kind of know what you're dealing with. These engines all have such stories to tell. Before I put the load of compression on the starter, we're just going to turn it over. Everything sounds pretty good. I like that. Let's do a dry compression test. Round and round we go. Where she stops, nobody knows. Well, that's not too impressive. Remember, too much oil doesn't hurt you. Just make sure you spin it around a few times. The last thing you want to do is getting too much oil in there and hydrolock the engine. So turn it over a little bit before you put the compression tester and give it a try, right? One doesn't want to break anything. Hydrolock is a bad thing. So dry compression came in at about 60. Let's see how she does with wet compression. Not much better, right? What do we have there? Somewhere around 70, give or take a little bit. That's enough to get started, but this isn't looking like a very healthy motor. I gotta get some oil into the crankcase too. Typically getting crankcase oil in there also helps with the compression. I must admit, I'm a little disappointed. To increase the probability of this engine starting, I'm going to pull this carburetor off and put that carburetor I've been hopping around. The carburetor I've been hopping around has been really sweet, so I'm going to use that. The other thing is, that's the blue and yellow, so I'm going to use my portable CDI box, right? Blue, yellow, and then the green, and then one clip to the head, and hopefully that gives me spark. Almost time to start this thing. I'm using my portable CDI box, right? Blue and yellow to red, which is the input of the CDI from the pulse generator. Green for ground, and the other ground wire on ground. And what I want to do is make sure I have spark before I get too far along, right? Nothing worse than trying to start something and it won't start because the batteries are dead or whatever. So I think you guys saw that. I'm going to put the plug in, put some gas in it, and see if we can't get this thing to fire up. This is an old start, a cold start. I haven't tried to start this thing anytime recently. Put gas in it. Choke. the throttle here. I think it should be ready to go. Wish me luck. I gotta adjust that idle. Hang on. I don't like engines revving up that much, especially when they haven't been started. Right, that's when you discover very bad things happening. I like it. I put a pan under it to make sure it's not leaking any oil, and that all looks good. By the way, before you start an engine, I recommend disconnecting wires that aren't going to be used. These two yellows come from the stator, and the black and red comes from the stator. The black and red powers up your CDI unit, and the other two yellows eventually go to the voltage regulator and charge your battery. You don't want to short those to the frame, because you'll eventually, well, actually pretty quickly, you can burn up your stators. Yeah, this thing looks real nice. I gotta tell you, I'm pleasantly surprised. I put that pan under it for leaking oil. There was no oil in it. So, kind of scratching my head wondering what the whole story on this motor was. I mean, look at that thing purr. Right? I have no complaints about this. I love it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this adventure. It's always good to have a positive surprise, like, boy, I got $500 worth of engine waiting to be smashed onto something. Anyway, I want to thank you all for dropping by to watch and comment and subscribe. Please remember to keep your feet down, your heads up, and I hope everyone has a pleasant surprise today. Bye now.